This is the story of 3 trees. Once upon a mountain top, 3 little trees stood, and they dreamed of what they wanted to be when they grew up. The first little tree looked up at the stars and said, "I want to hold treasure. I want to be covered with gold and filled with precious stones. I'm going to be the most beautiful treasure chest in all the world." The second little tree looked out at the small stream that was trickling by on its way to the ocean. "I want to be traveling mighty waters and carrying powerful kings. I'm going to be the strongest ship in all the world." The third little tree looked down into the valley below, where busy men and women were living very busy lives. "I don't want to leave the mountaintop at all. I want to grow so tall that when people stop to look at me, they'll raise their eyes to heaven and they're going to think of God. I'm going to be the tallest tree in all the world." Years passed. The rain came, the sun shone, and the little trees grew tall. And then one day, 3 woodcutters climbed the mountain. The first woodcutter looked at the very first tree and he said, "This tree is beautiful. It's perfect for me." And with a swoop of his shining axe, the first tree fell. "Now I'm going to be made into a beautiful treasure chest. I'm going to hold wonderful treasure," thought the first tree. The second woodcutter looked at the second tree and he said, "This tree is strong. It's perfect for me." And with a swoop of his shining axe, the second tree fell to the ground. "Now I'm going to sail the mighty seas," thought the second tree. "I'm going to be a strong ship for mighty kings." The third tree felt her heart sink when the last woodcutter looked her way. She stood tall and straight and she pointed bravely to heaven. But the woodcutter didn't even look up. "Any kind of tree will do for me," he muttered. And with a swoop of his shining axe, the third tree fell. The first tree rejoiced when the woodcutter brought her to a carpenter's shop. But the carpenter fashioned the tree into a feed box for animals, not into a treasure chest. That once beautiful tree wasn't covered with gold, nor filled with treasure. She was coated with sawdust and filled with hay for dirty, hungry farm animals. The second tree smiled when the woodcutter took her to the shipyard. She was full of excitement, but no mighty sailing ship was to be made that day. Instead, the strong tree was hammered and planed into a simple little fishing boat. She was too small and too weak to sail on a big, vast ocean. She was too small even for a river. Instead, she was taken to a little lake. The third tree was confused when the woodcutter cut her into strong beams and left her laying in a dark, dingy corner of a lumber yard. "What happened?" wondered the third tree. "All I ever wanted was to stay on the mountaintop and point people to God." Many, many days and nights passed. The 3 trees, they nearly forgot their dreams. But then, one night, golden starlight poured over the first tree as a young woman placed her newborn baby into the feeding box. "I wish I could make a cradle for him," the husband whispered. But the mother squeezed his hand and she smiled as the starlight shone on the smooth and the sturdy manger. This is perfect, she said. And suddenly the first tree knew that he was holding the greatest treasure in all the world. Then one evening, a tired traveller and his friends crowded into the little old fishing boat. The traveller fell asleep as the second tree quietly drifted out onto the lake. But soon a thundering and thrashing storm arose, and the little tree shuddered with fear. She knew she didn't have the strength to carry so many passengers safely across the lake in all that wind and all that rain. But the man woke up. He stood up, and he stretched out his hand, and he said, "Peace." And the storm stopped as quickly as it had started. And then the second tree knew that he was carrying the King of all heaven and earth. Then one Friday morning, the third tree was startled when her beams were yanked from that dark, dingy corner in the lumberyard. She flinched as she was carried through an angry crowd, people jeering and shouting. She shuddered when soldiers nailed a man's hand to her. She felt ugly. She felt harsh. She felt cruel. But on the Sunday morning, when the sun rose up and the earth trembled beneath her with joy, the third tree knew that God's love had changed everything. God's love had made the third tree strong. And every time people thought of the third tree, they would think of God. While she was not the tallest tree in the world, she still pointed people to God. So, next time your dreams don't come true, sit tight, be patient, and remember that God is thinking of something far better for you.
Well done, darling. That's my missus.